Call Barron County Board of Supervisors for Monday, May 17, 2021 into order. And a roll call public notification.
Terry McRoberts.
Yes. Here.
Mark Thompson.
Present.
Bud Hanson.
Here.
Stacy Wenzel. Here. Gina Heller.
Here.
Bob Anderson let us know he couldn't be here today. Stan Buchanan.
Here.
Don Horstman let us know he couldn't be here today. Bill Efforts.
Yes.
Bert Skinner.
Here.
Dale Heineke.
Here.
Bob Rogers.
Here.
Oscar Stove.
Here.
John Banks.
Here.
Terry Lee.
Here.
Carolyn Bartlett. Here. Pam Ball. Here. Bill Strado.
Present.
Gary Taxell.
Here.
Jim Gores.
Present.
Gary Nelson.
Here.
Roberta Mosentine. Here. Pete Olson.
Here.
Steve Johnson.
Here.
Carol Moen. Here. Eric Panier.
Tardy.
He said he's gonna be online, but it'll be a little bit late.
Okay, so he's not here at this time. Okay.
Right.
Karaoke.
Here.
Russ Rinzig.
Here.
Todd Gerlin.
Here.
Okay, so at this time, we've got 26 present and 3 absent. IDN Cook County Clerk has complied with the open meeting public notification law. These notices are posted on the electronic meeting notice board on the first and second floor of the government center and the main floor of the justice center. A hard copy is in the published meeting folder just inside the clerk's office window. In addition, all 5 county newspapers have been notified, and this notice was published on May 13th at 9:47 a.m.
Okay. Okay, item number 2, the invocation. Our pastor isn't here, so maybe let's have a moment of silence for our own thoughts to make sure we do the right thing by the residents of Barron County. Okay, pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, special matters and announcements. Jeff has some items.
Good evening. A couple of things. First, I'm fully aware of the muck up here at the Chetek recycling site, John, on Saturday. I apologize that this happened. The person that was to be there got called into work, could not get out of it. He made the appropriate phone calls. For some reason, people just failed to pick up their phone. I'm very sorry that this happened. It will not happen again. We're going to change the signs, and we're going to have we'll change the way we do things. We'll get it done, and I'm sorry that this happened. On regards to the highway, Mark Serby asked me to read this to the board. Erickson is working on the grading on the west side of State Highway 25 and also working on the west side utility hookups, sewer, stormwater, and water for west side facilities. Underground utilities for the buildings will begin later this week. Foundation work for the wash bay and the ADRC cold storage will begin next week. Reminder, if you'd like to visit the site, please make an appointment with Mark Serby. Safety is paramount on this project, and we do not want anyone wandering around during working hours or after hours. Drive-bys to look at the progress is certainly okay, but if you want up close and personal view, please make an appointment. There is a link on the county website, pictures of the progress. The facility committee meeting, which was scheduled for tomorrow, has been moved to May 25th. Jody, can you show everybody on our website? There you go. So if you go to the Barron County, oops, didn't make it to the. If you go to the Barron County website, go to the main page. On the right-hand side of the page, there's a link to the videos and the pictures. Edit up there for a second.
Did I get? Oh, I got kicked out.
Yeah, I emailed the link to all the county board members and press and everything, so I could get it. It's not hard.
Okay. Okay. Yep, it's just right here on the right-hand side of the home page. You want me to go in?
Yeah, just
Oh.
click so they can see actually when it comes up, what it looks like. There's a video and then there's a series of pictures. Maybe just run 30 seconds of the video or something to get an idea of what it looks like.
Look at that.
I will mention that Erickson Excavating actually worked Saturday morning on the site when it was dry. They were out there right away after the rain ended in Barron and got right back to work, so they're getting a lot done.
Thanks, Jody. Okay, item number 4, approve the agenda. What I'd like to do is move item number 12I, the American Rescue Plan Act funding update, up to 7A. I'd like to talk about that before we actually get into the resolution number 8. So we'd like to move 12I to 7A. Would somebody approve the agenda that way?
So moved.
Supervisor
Done.
Olson, second by Supervisor Mosenteam. Anybody have any problems with the agenda or that change? Not all is in favor of approving the agenda, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign, and motion's carried. Item number 5, approve the minutes of the April 20th, 2021 and May 12th, 2021 minutes. Motion by Supervisor Renzig, second by Supervisor Thompson. Anybody got any concerns or changes? Not all is in favor of approving those 2 sets of minutes, indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed by the same sign? That motion's carried. Item number 6, public comment. We have a couple individuals who'd like to speak. And when you come up, would you please state your name and your address, and then you have 3 minutes to talk. First person is Julie Navala.
Julie Nevela, 572 2nd Street, Clayton. We live 4/10 of a mile south of the proposed event center. I am here today to express my concerns. My first concern is the remote location of the event center and the lack of amenities to support a safe place for wedding parties to stay. The lack of amenities will force people to drive after consuming alcohol. This area already lacks law enforcement due to its remoteness, and now you will be encouraging travel after consumption. Does the county plan to provide more law enforcement in this area to ensure the safety of residents, and at what cost? My second concern is the late night music and party noises that will come from the event center. We live in the country to get away from the noise and commotion of the city. Would you like to listen to a party next to your house every weekend? This might be Ms. Bergman's dream, but it is not our dream. We cherish the solitude and peacefulness of the country. Please do not take that from us. Thirdly, the A1 preservation zoning was established to preserve our farmland to prevent commercial construction in rural areas. Please honor the law of the A1 preservation set by the state of Wisconsin and do not allow this to happen. A1 state funding could be jeopardized if the county were audited by the state and it was found that A1 preservation land was rezoned for an event center. Yes, Barron County has 3 other rural event centers, but they were established before the state of Wisconsin changed its law that governs the funding for A1 preservation. The rezoning and construction of those 3 existing rural event centers did not jeopardize state funding for egg preservation. Unfortunately, Ms. Bergman's event center does jeopardize funding that could affect the entire county. We have a zoning department to draft and instill ordinances for the greater good of Barron County and its residents. By changing the zoning for one person, precedence is being set for anyone in the future to request rezoning from A1 to A2, leading to spot zoning countywide, which is not the objective of zoning. Others interested in rezoning from A1 will now see this as an opportunity to follow this case. This could ultimately jeopardize the preservation of farmland in Barron County, which is a large part of our economy. Please don't allow this event center to open. Please protect Barron County farmland and its farmers. I, along with the neighbors, were never contacted by Ms. Bergman, as she stated in the Barron News Shield. Nobody has discussed sound barriers or sound ordinances that should apply to this matter. Property values around the event center will decrease while taxes will increase. Please consider all facts before deciding. We ask before this progresses any further that each one of you physically view the location of the event center to realize the remoteness of the area, the lack of sound barriers, and the proximity of the event center to the neighboring houses. Also, please consider and honor the state rules of the A1 preservation law. Thank you.
Thank you. Second person would be Patty Green.
name is Patty Green. I live at 129 21st Street, Hammond. My comment is just a comment. Last Tuesday's meeting that you had a committee of the whole, the zoning office gave you suggestions on open meetings when you're considering zoning changes. And I'm just wondering if you're going to implement that.
Thank you. Okay, item number 7, zoning ordinance amendment, rezoning town of Turtle Lake, Iowa, Bergman. Can I get a motion to approve that rezoning? Motion by Supervisor Gores, seconded by Supervisor Gurley. Okay, now, so we got a motion and a second to approve this zoning, but we're ultimately gonna have a roll call on this. And I guess the discussion's in order. Anybody has anything they want to say? Supervisor Olson?
As I stated at our last meeting, my inclination is to generally support the recommendation of our committees. This recommendation came to us as a result of our failure to do so previously. And I guess I'm asking Bob, is there value? I'm thinking there's value in us delaying this and have that public hearing that we could do to hear more evidence, to have some of the questions that are raised here addressed. I don't know, as chair, I'm putting you on the spot, but that's where my inclination is. I'm opposed or inclined right now to vote against the resolution or table one of the two until we can have that public hearing. I'd like your thoughts on that.
My thoughts are, you're right. We can have a public hearing. We can discuss all of this before the entire county board. We can also do away with the zoning committee. I mean, if every time an issue like this comes up, where the zoning committee denies something and there's some backlash at the county board, if we're going to end up with a public hearing on that, then we might just as well get rid of the zoning committee altogether. That's my feeling on it.
Thanks, Bob.
Supervisor Hanky?
I sit on the zoning committee, and this clearly was against all principles of the zoning law. I agree with Bob. If we're gonna approve this, that's the next motion to make is to dissolve the zoning law. That's because what purpose does it serve if you're gonna, they investigate it, they deal with it, bring a recommendation, and then it's turned down. So, I'm probably against this because it does not meet any of the zoning regulations.
Fun.
Supervisor Hanson?
The lady that just spoke, did she appear at the zoning meeting before?
No.
Did you hear the answer? No, she did not.
Thank you.
Supervisor Taxtall?
Bob, why was the reversal of the first decision to approve it?
To approve it now,
Yeah,
it's based on state statute, Gary.
Okay.
And the state statute is 5969 5E5, and it quite simply says that upon receipt of the agency report, that's our report, and this is going back to our last month's meeting, the board, that's the county board, may refuse to deny the petition as recommended by the agency, in which case it shall re-refer the petition to the agency with directions to draft an ordinance to effectuate the petition and report the ordinance back to the board, which may then enact or reject the ordinance. The state statute is very clear. Once it came back to us, we had no option but to adopt the zoning change and then bring it back here, where now it comes before a vote to accept it or reject it again. May I continue to have the floor?
You bet.
And I don't want to hash
the ordinance again. We've done that. We did it a month ago. We talked about it here at the committee as a whole. We don't need to go back there again. When I was interviewed for the Corporation Counsel's office, I was brought into a room by John. I got sat down around a big table with every department head at that table. And eventually, it came around to Paul Flottam, who was the zoning administrator at the time. And he asked me, what do I think about zoning? And I told him, quite honestly, I have some issues when it comes to telling a property owner what he can do and what he can't do with his property. But I also said, I know what my duty is, and I will follow the ordinance. I will pay attention to the law of Barron County. We paid attention to the law of Barron County at our initial zoning committee meeting on this matter. We paid attention to the law when it got referred back to us, and we were required to pass, to recommend approval of the zoning on this matter. That was pursuant to the law that I just read. I have no intention of not complying with the law on the vote that's coming tonight. I do believe that it sets a precedent, and if we're going to start setting these kind of precedents when it comes to zoning, may as well get rid of the zoning committee, may as well get rid of the zoning law.
Any other comments or questions? Supervisor Marlett?
I just want to ask a question. You know, we had a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and I realized that according to the statutes, you had to bring it back as an approval. And maybe this can't be answered, but my question is, did you have any other discussion at your zoning meeting when you met again, or did you just make just make the recommendation that you send it back to us this way? Was there any other discussion? Because I think we did talk about, was there other opportunities or other avenues to get this done? And so, was there any discussion? Maybe it's not my business, but that's my question.
No, that's fine. Discussion was minimal. We knew that we were locked into what we had to do with the statute.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? If not, we'll go for a roll call vote.
So we let John explain what we're voting.
Well, I was gonna, I don't say it right. If you vote yes, you're saying that zoning is going to be passed from Ag 1 to Ag 2, and the event center will be reality. So if you vote yes, you're voting yes to the event center. If you vote no, you're not gonna have one.
I'm wondering if John wants to elaborate on that, because once it's rezoned, it's not just an event center that can be there, it opens it up to.
Ag 2 has a lot of things.
Yeah, I guess that maybe we need to hear that.
I think Dave can probably explain it better than me. What's allowed once it's rezoned?
Under the agricultural food district, it's the same permitted uses as the Ag 1. And we also allow home occupations as permitted uses. Special exceptions are such things as ski hills, racetracks, drag strips, private airports, private dumps and landfills, private junk and salvage yards, private kennels, sawmills, sewage disposal lagoons, shooting ranges, automobile repair, welding repair, machine repair, feed and fertilizer sales, woodworking shops. Then it also indicates other retail or wholesale businesses involving sales of and/or services similar to the activities listed above and where they are not otherwise provided for in this chapter. So there are certain things that do come before the Board of Adjustment as special exceptions, they're not specifically listed as a special exception, but they're also not listed as a special exception in other districts that potentially could be approved as a special exception.
Answer your question. Supervisor Gores?
Yeah, what do you call it? I was talking with another supervisor, I'm not gonna mention who. But anyhow, mentioned there that we're sitting here talking about a 5 acre parcel. Where at the same time, Rice Lake, for instance, annexed 50 some acres and Walmart goes up. What do you call it? And this is all cropland. But if something's annexed, if the city annexes cropland and stuff like that, and they'll take big portions, and all of a sudden now we're sitting here talking about a 5 acre parcel, and we're having a holy fit about it. Okay, I respect what the law or how it's being perceived, but at the same time, I'm sitting there got a big time problem with that for the simple reason that cities can sit there and do what they damn well want to when it comes to annexation. What do you call them? But when we sit there and get out into the towns, and I'm a town chairman, and what do you call it? And all of a sudden they're we got to abide by all these stiff rules, and they can sit there. I mean, well, Cumberland there, what do you call them? Did they annex that cornfield there where they put that doggone 20 acres of solar panels? I mean, they were standing in corn stalks when they were installing those. I mean, there's the case there where it come where, like I say, and I'm not knocking what the cities can do, but at the same time, it's kind of a double standard, or when they sit there and you can't do something on a small portion like this, but yet at the same time, a city of any kind can sit there and all of a sudden take a great big hunk of land that was a great big 50 acre field and turn it into a parking lot and a great big building. And sometimes the buildings then are, after a few years, like Walmart, all of a sudden they sit there and go, well, we want a bigger one. So then they went out further out and they annexed them some more. And then the building was sitting there empty for quite some time. I mean, they can do this time and time and time again. What do you call it? But we can't sit there and do something with a small parcel like that. I got a problem with it.
Supervisor Skinner, did you have a comment?
Well, my comment on, and referring to that solar panel, that was in the city to begin with. It wasn't annexed in the city to have that occur. It had already been in the city. So it wasn't annexed for that purpose. It already had been in the city. That'd be my response to that. My question is, I'm a little confused because, John, you mentioned in our last, because I was looking at the minutes of our last meeting, that we had two choices. As I read this, to approve the resolution, refer the resolution back to the zoning, or the resolution to deny it. So I guess we really only had one choice then, rather than these two choices.
No, your choices were, you could have approved their resolution to deny it, which would have ended it right then. What you ended up doing was refusing to deny it,
Right.
which sent it back to the zoning committee with essentially directions to bring it back to you as an ordinance to effectuate the rezoning. Then you get another kick at the cat as a county board to say, yep, we're gonna rezone it, or we're gonna now vote it down, which you could have done last month, but you've got a chance to rezone it or deny it tonight.
So before we had our meeting as a whole, this was already approved before we even had our meeting as a whole.
That was, the meeting of the whole was an educational.
After the.
It wasn't for that one rezoning, but it was an educational thing.
Okay.
Hopefully it's helping tonight.
Okay, and I guess my last comment, I would agree with Bob, an ordinance is a law. And that's why we have ordinances, and we deal with that all the time in our communities. And if the ordinance isn't going to be enforced, then why have the ordinance? That's my last one.
Supervisor Schrader?
Well, somebody dropped the ball along the way here, and I don't know who it was. Mrs. Bergman told me she came in here 4 or 5 years ago to talk to somebody in zoning. What would happen if she move this barn, which was vacated at that time. Well, she wasn't ready to do anything, but then, post that, she went ahead and come up here and got building permits, sanitary permits, state approved plans. You know what? Somebody should have told her, hey, I don't think you can do this, Mrs. Bergman, because of the fact is what Dave and Bert and Bob referred to. To me, and I'm not an attorney, but wouldn't that be implied consent? If nobody ever tells you that you can't do it because of this ordinance or that ordinance?
Anybody that hasn't spoke that wants to? Supervisor Olson?
Actually, 2 points I want to make, and as a member of the Barron City Council and having been involved in extraterritorial zoning and dealing with annexations, I understand Supervisor Gore's concern and frustration, but state law has been set up to allow cities and municipalities to grow in an orderly fashion, and I understand there's conflicts there, and that's just, it's the way it is, but me, it's a little bit different, and I think of Supervisor Rogers' comment about his old friend spot zoning, that's where I go with that. And the other, I guess, a comment on Supervisor Schradel's comment a minute ago, I don't recall the timeline of when Mrs. Bergman came in and when the farmland zoning law changed, but I'm wondering if her questions didn't precede the implementation of that law, so it wouldn't have mattered. I don't know, I'm just.
The law changed about, what, 8 years ago? When Barron County,
November 2016.
2000 what?
5 years ago. And she started this process before that, didn't she?
But then why didn't somebody tell her when she came in for the permits and that she had to pay the money? Somebody should have said, hey,
Yeah. Anyway, that was my comment.
you've got to be told about this. That's only fair.
If they would have understood what she was doing, I'm sorry.
Dave, you want to say something?
Just one quick,
No, wait, Jim, Dave.
May I go to the podium?
Sure.
What Bill has brought up has been brought up before, where there was misinformation, lack of information presented to or not presented to the applicant. And during the May 5 public hearing, there was testimony. And looking back at that testimony, I have a brief portion of that I'd just like to read, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So it begins with a comment by Chairman Rogers. Mr. Rogers indicates, would it be fair to state that you've kind of jumped the gun a little bit here? Mrs. Bergman's comment. Here's a little history to that. When you see, we moved the barn on April 27th, is when we thought about moving this barn 2016. And I came over here to the zoning, and I'm not sure who I talked to, and I said, this is what I'd like to do. We haven't moved the barn. We want to. You know, I understand that part of saving the land, but I also understand that part of saving barns. Because when you drive around now, how many barns are down? So that was part of my goal, was to just, you know, I'm not going to be the savior and save every barn that is crumbling, but that was part of my goal. But I did come over here to zoning and I asked them, I said, this is what I'd like to do. I don't know what I have to do. Give me some guidelines. And I was asked, are you going to live in it? No. Are you going to have animals in it? No. Then you really don't have to do too much other than you're going to have to check with the size of it and everything to get sanitary permits to do that type of thing. And that would all have to be approved. That's kind of where, when I left that office that day, this kind of where I thought we were at. Was that it wasn't a big deal. And so we just talked about it a little more. And then, like I said, then we moved the barn and it sat there for a while. And then we just started going at it. So with that, just a couple things. When the barn was moved onto the property, this addresses your question. When the barn was moved on the property on April 27, 2016, conversations with the zoning staff would have been prior to April 27, 2016. The current ordinance was not in place prior to April 27, 2016. Zoning office staff would not have informed Mr. Bergman of the current ordinance that was not adopted until November of 2016. Why did the zoning staff ask the two questions? Are you going to live in it? Are you going to have animals in it? A land use permit would have been required if the barn was to be converted to a residence or used to house animals. Since the use was not either of these, no permit was required to locate that barn on the property. It was an accessory structure. It's a barn. It's agricultural one property. And the comment, then you really don't have to do too much other than you're going to have to check with the size of it and everything to get sanitary permits to do that type of thing. What type of thing would require a sanitary permit? It wasn't going to be used for a house. A barn doesn't require a sanitary permit. Perhaps the idea of an event center was introduced at that time. In the comment, and that would all have to be approved. Why would zoning staff make such a statement that there was no permit required to locate the barn on the property? Perhaps an event center. So that conversation was over 5 years ago. Okay? The sanitary permit that I believe it might have been recently reviewed. Okay? When it comes to a sanitary permit, if we get a sanitary permit, doesn't matter what use it is, okay? If that sanitary permit meets all statutory requirements, we're obligated to issue the permit. We cannot hold off on approving the sanitary permit. If it meets all requirements of state law, as the regulatory authority that issues a state sanitary permit, we're obligated to issue that. Now, can the use that's associated with that be denied? Absolutely. And they have a sanitary permit, but no purpose to install a septic system. So there's a lot of discussion here of when this conversation was, what the conversation was. But looking back at the testimony at the public hearing, it seems to me that there was plenty of discussion back in 2016. It's a matter of 5 years later. What do you recall that conversation?
Supervisor Hanson, I believe you had your hand up.
I just wanted to know if, when you grant a zoning in Ag 2 that has a lot of possibilities, can you limit it to one thing? Or does some other committee have to do that? If we were to say this is approved for an event barn, but no other uses for the next 100 years, can you do something like that?
You're rezoning it to Ag 2. So then everything else that's covered under an Ag 2 district is in play. However, some of the uses that are going to be possible would have to go to the Board of Adjustment to get either the special exception permit or the conditional use permit, and they can have conditions on it. So your job today is to say yes or no to the rezoning to Ag 2. Whatever events the ordinance covers, what can or cannot be put in there, and the Board of Adjustment has some control over some of those.
Thank you.
Supervisor Strelo?
Dave is doing the answer to this. So if I come in and I have to get a sanitary permit before I build, correct? before I get a building permit? Normally say I'm build a house or whatever.
For a residence, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, here's the other thing. Most of us only do this once in our life. So we need a lot of guidance from whatever, in this case zoning, to get through this, because we don't know exactly what's going on, especially for something like Mrs. Bergman here. You know, like I said, somebody dropped the ball there, I don't know who it was, but she didn't get enough information. And I said, go back to implied consent, because she felt that they're not objecting, I guess I can go ahead, which she did. Spent a lot of money, a lot of time and effort. And the township didn't interject to it.
Speak, I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
And Mrs. Bergman had her hand up. She's like, you know, she's not allowed to speak.
No.
Not unless supervisor has a permission board wants.
Yeah, ahead of time. Okay.
The only comment that I wanted to make there, and I don't know, it should carry some clout, but at the same time, it really doesn't have a lot to do. And that is that it was unanimously approved by the town board. I hope the town boards have some say, but
It was or wasn't?
it was.
Any further questions? Okay, now we're going to take the roll call vote and, we'll start that, yeah?
Okay, does everybody understand how they're
Yeah,
voting?
now again, a yes vote means you're allowing it to be the rezoning to happen from Ag 1 to Ag 2, which will allow an event center to be built. If you say yes, zoning happens, event center is allowed. Gary?
I know people say this doesn't set a precedence, but it really sets a precedence to a lot of other people that want to do the same thing. And I have a real concern about that, because you're deviating from what the statutes say and making an exception. We get into that gray area and you've got a mess on your hands where zoning is going to be making all kinds of decisions on what can be done, what can't be done. I don't like to deviate from consistency, and I think we're going to end up in a can of worms.
Okay, let's start the roll call vote.
Mark Thompson,
No.
Bud Hanson,
Yes.
Stacy Wenzel. No. Dana Heller,
Yes.
Bob Anderson is absent. Sam Buchanan,
No.
Don Horstman is absent. Bill Efforts,
Yes.
Bert Skinner,
No.
Dale Heineke,
No.
Bob Rogers,
No.
Oscar Scope,
No.
John Banks,
No.
Terry Lee,
No.
Carolyn Bartlett. No. Pam Fall,
Yes.
Bill Schradel,
Yes,
Gary Taxdell,
No.
Jim Gores,
Yes.
Gary Nelson,
No.
Roberta Mosentine,
No.
Pete Olson,
No.
Steve Johnson,
No.
Carol Moen,
No.
Eric Panier,
No.
Lou Yoki,
No.
Russ Rinzig,
No.
Todd Gerlin,
No.
Jerry McRoberts.
No.
Okay, so I have 21 no, 6 yes, and 2 absent. Agreed?
And therefore, the rezoning request is denied, and that's the end of that. Okay, item number 8, resolution authorizing the county board chair and the finance director / county auditor to act on behalf of, sorry, I'm supposed to go to 7A first. That's the American Rescue Plan Acting funding update by our administrator and finance director.
Okay, what we're gonna do, thank you, Louis, and thank you, board members, for adjusting your agenda. What I'd like to do is we're gonna go through briefly a PowerPoint webinar that I attended about what you're voting on next. And so I just want you to understand that if you vote in the affirmative on this next resolution, what you're doing is you're saying, yep, Barron County, we're in the game for this $8.745 million of American Recovery Plan dollars that are out there for us to draw down. Our application is complete. If you approve this resolution tonight, I'll sign the final document tomorrow, and we'll have the money transferred into our account. Florence County got their money today, some other counties got their money today. So we'll just go through this quickly, so if we go on to the next one. Next one. So just some fact sheets. If you want the 8-page summary and how the money was arrived at for our county, it's there. It was distributed to the counties and the counties that are counties and cities in the US based on population. Next slide, please. So we have a 151-page must-read document. That is the guiding document. That is the interim final rule. So I can tell you about the first 131 pages is just flim flam. Didn't say that. Continuing on. It's a very accounting technical term. There are some keywords in here that we understand. Shall means it's mandatory. May allows. Encourages and should, this is a preference. So, some things that are mandatory. Tell you what, I'm not going to even go down that road because the rules keep changing every day. Next slide. Common questions, how counties can spend the money. We can spend it on capital improvements as long as it's for something for public health. For example, jail upgrades to our Sally Port would probably be in. Stormwater and water improvements. Roads and bridges, but only if the roads and bridges are part of a water or sewer upgrade. You can possibly do some property tax relief. You can do, but special districts are in, and there are compliance and audit costs. But it's very interesting. If you read the fine point of the 151-page document, there's a very important thing that's missing, which we all deal with here every year in our county. There's no end date for the audit. Very concerning. When we do grant dollars, there's typically a 3 or 4 year window that they can come back and say, we'll audit that transaction. There's no end date to these numbers for audit. Next slide. Key things. We can, Supervisor Zask, at the property committee, we asked about the water over in Comstock. I believe that will qualify though. Didn't know that till last Thursday. So, as of January 27th, that's the declaration of the public health crisis. So in March, anything we spend after March 3rd of 2021, possibly is the covered period. There are deadlines for comments. August 31st is when you submit your first interim report. August 31st, that only applies to counties above 250,000 population. And then by October 31st, for all counties, we turn in a quarterly report. And by 12/31 of 2021, the funds must be obligated but not incurred. Now, that's an interesting dimension because I think what that means at the counties is we have to encumber the money, and I'm assuming encumbrance is by resolution. So if we would, yeah, I would assume so too. We have to actually put the cash out the door by December 31st of 2026. Next slide. We've already done all this. Thank you, Bonnie. She's got all that done. Our DUNS and SAM number. Next slide. She's clicked on that. She's provided them with the information, and we will certify this. The certification has happened, and the Treasury guidance is out. Next slide. Next slide. We talked about that before. Provide equity-focused services. That's a big, wide open area. We'll talk about that in the future. The rate replace lost revenue. This is really interesting. We've actually clarified that. 2 weeks ago or a month ago, we were under the impression that we could look at individual line items, and that's not true. It's based on entity-wide. But it's very interesting to note that we have until 12/31/2024 to determine what year over the base year of 2019, which for Barron County would be 12/31 of 2019, whether or not our overall entity-wide revenues have gone down. Next slide. Place loss revenue, next slide, we talked about that. Keep going. Premium pay for essential employees, there are limits on this, but it's very interesting. A worker would not be engaged if they worked from home. Well, let's just pump the brakes a bit. Think about what we were told on March 12th of 2020. We were told, stay home. So that begs a really important question. What do we do for workers from 3/12 of 2020 to 12/31 of 2020 when we would be eligible to pay them this premium? How are we going to do that when a lot of them are working from home? Kind of leaves a big gap. Not being critical, I'm just telling you how it is. Next slide. Water, sewer, broadband. This is kind of the wide open one, water and sewer. Now it's really interesting because counties in the West don't do counties in the Midwest typically don't do water and sewer. Counties in the East do. Broadband is wide open. That's something that could be discussed. I don't want to get into the broadband infrastructure industry, and I don't think we should. But there are some rules here. We're going to have to guarantee whoever we work with of 100 megabytes per second download and 100 megabytes upload speed. Okay? And it's interesting because if you read the characterizations of how to spend this money prior to page 130, you realize that anything you do here on either of these has to be fair and equitable. So how do we determine fair and equitable? Fair and equitable is based on census block data. So that could be problematic. Next slide. Ineligible expenses, we know about the pension fund. We know we can't do that. There's other restrictions. This should say limited to states and territories. States and territories cannot reduce their, for example, their income tax rates. Can't do that. Next slide. Reporting requirements. Jody and Bonnie and I will take care of those. We've talked about when reports will be due. Next slide. And we're done. So that's a very high overview without going page by page of what this next resolution is going to authorize to be done. Questions for me? So as I told the executive committee, I don't know if I told the board this, and maybe if I have, I told you last month. This is like a light switch. Either A, you take the money, B, you don't, it goes back to the federal government. That's how it works. All right, thank you.
As Jeff was pointing out, the rules are changing constantly, and we're going to have to go slow on this, because we want to make sure everything, how we spend it, if we pass this resolution, that we do it in accordance with the rules. Supervisor Hanson?
Jeff, do you have any reason we shouldn't take it?
No.
Okay, and before I'll wait till we get to the resolution before I say what I'm going to. Okay, number 8, resolution authorizing the county board chair and the finance director / county auditor to act on behalf of Barron County in accepting and overseeing the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Can I get a motion to approve that resolution? Motion by Supervisor Nelson, seconded by Supervisor Heller. We should take this money. It's allowing me to accept it. It's allowing Jody to work with Jeff. My question for Jeff and Jody, when we get onto this thing later down the road and you've got some plans authorized, can you go ahead by yourself and do it, or could you? But I think you will come to the county board, but what can you do and what will you do?
Well, we can. First of all, let's talk about what I'm not going to do. I don't feel comfortable just budgeting this month in 2022. And so I did say this when I was on the floor, but I want everybody to be very clear. Today, my inclination is just pump the brakes. Take the money when you can get it, because it's coming out in 2 tranches. You're going to get some now, and you'll get some 13 to 15 months from now, the other half. So we'd be foolish not to take it, because if you don't take it, it's going to go back to the federal government. They've given you the rules how you can spend it. What I would recommend, where I'm at today is, my recommendation is going to be, you bring it back by resolution to the county board how you're going to spend the money. So the board's making a decision. For example, if the board directs the county administrator, get us a contract for $1.5 million for broadband with the XYZ company, great. I'll get you the contract. They'll bury cable. We'll give them $1.5 million. We'll do it by resolution. There's another mechanism. I mean, there are all kinds of mechanisms here. you could very well have a city come and say, you know what, we're doing a water and sewer project. We're gonna put in $800,000. We would like you to put in $800,000. And oh, by the way, we're gonna extend our water line a mile out into the country or half a mile or a mile and a half. That's a county board decision. Is that a good thing? It's certainly allowable. That's why we do it by resolution, and I would post it to the website every time we spend it. That's the answer your question. That's how I would recommend doing it. I know some counties are saying, well, if it's 10,000 or less, we're just gonna let a committee make the decision. I don't feel comfortable. This is huge what you're voting on tonight. I just cannot stress this enough. This is a huge, huge, huge deal. And there's gonna be lots of rules, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff to follow up on between now and 12/31 of 2024.
So what you're basically saying in layman's terms is that if we pass this resolution, every dollar that gets spent on this money will be authorized by resolution of this county board.
That's what I'm saying, I'm leaning towards today. If today is the day, I would do it. I mean, the rules could change.
I know, listen, I feel that way too, and that's the whole thing, we gotta take our time on this, because we don't want to screw it up. Supervisor Olson.
Just clarification of two things. He referenced an on and off switch. I think it's a dimmer switch too, because you can turn it down and all the way off, right? And you can just not take some of it. But take
Right,
part.
or you could take some of it, and then you get to 12/31 of 2026 and give back what you didn't
And the
use.
second thing is, I hate to say this, but if we don't use it, there's people waiting in the wings, large municipalities that are gonna take it. That's just the sad reality of it is, so if we could put it to use in this area here, we really, I think in the interest of the citizens of Bear County, we need to do it.
And we're gonna be exploring different ideas, and they keep changing, but, we are gonna have the appropriate committees review this stuff. For instance, we may have executive and property, have a joint committee meeting to discuss broadband. We may do, like you mentioned, the municipalities. Jeff's trying to organize WCA personnel to come up here and educate the municipalities, because, quite frankly, you don't have the staff to get through all this stuff. So with the county and the WCA, we can maybe get all the municipalities together and explain it so they don't get stung. Supervisor Taxton.
Yeah, is there gonna be are we gonna develop a process on how we're going to use this money, how it flows and all that?
Yes.
And do we take a roll call vote on this because of the amount of money that we're doing?
We're gonna take, on this resolution?
Yeah.
We are taking a roll call vote so that it's documented and how every supervisor feels that we're taking this money, yes. Any other questions? Okay, if not, let's start the roll call.
Brown Hanson,
A yes means we pass the resolution.
Yes.
Stacy Wenzel,
Yes.
Dana Heller,
Yes.
Bob Anderson is absent. Dan Buchanan,
Yes.
Horstman is absent. Bill Leppert,
Yes.
Kurt Skinner,
Yes.
Bill Heineke,
Yes.
Bob Rogers,
Yes.
Oscar Scope,
Yes.
John Banks,
Yes.
Terry Lee,
Yes.
Carol Bartlett,
Yes.
Pam Paul,
Yes.
Bill Schrader,
A reserved yes, because I don't.
Come here, man.
Jim Bradshaw is paying for this farce.
Gary Taxell,
Yes.
Jim Gordon,
Yeah.
Gary Nelson.
Yes.
Bert Mosentein,
Yes.
Pete Olson,
Yes.
Steve Johnson,
Yes.
Carol Moen,
Yes.
Eric Panier,
Yes.
Uyoki,
Yes.
Russ Rinzig,
Yes.
Todd Gerlin,
Yes.
Jerry McRoberts,
Yes.
Mark Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 27 yes and 2 absent.
I'm sure that it passes unanimously except for the 2 absentees. Number 9, resolution requesting elimination of the Badger Care eligibility cliff. Jeff had a lot of information in there, but I know WCA supports it. What it boils down to is if you are eligible for Badger Care, I know with my granddaughter, I think that if you have one person, it's like $12,000, and you get, if you're, let's say it's $12,000 for one person. If you make up to 12, you can get Badger Care. If you make $12,001, you don't get it. There's no graduation either. And they do that by household numbers from 1 and 2 and 3. maybe 4 is 25,000 or something like that. The gist of this resolution is to have them try to develop it so that there isn't just a cliff, so that somebody's not working, then there's incentive to not work. And so maybe if they graduated, as you continue to make more money over the present cliff, you pay a little bit toward your insurance. And that incentivizes people to get back to work and do some, other this disincentivizes you to work if you need that insurance. I guess I should have, excuse me, asked for a motion or a resolution to pass this. Motion by Supervisor Renzig, second by Supervisor Rogers. Okay, does anybody have any questions on this? Okay, if not, all is in favor of passing this resolution requesting elimination of the Badger Care eligibility cliff, indicate by saying aye.
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 If you're against it, say no. It passes, thank you. Item number 10, and this will be a roll call vote, and we need 2/3 of our 29 for it to pass. 2/3 is 20 members, we have 27 here. Okay, the resolution is to authorize funding for the property insurance appraisal services. That was, I think Jeff has a lot of information on that. I think executive and property approved this in the past, but we didn't get here because we're waiting for our board I'm on to tell them what the credit is. They haven't got that yet, but Jeff and I agree that I'd like to see us go forward because we, as Jeff indicated in his thing, this appraisal is necessary, important for our overall insurance portfolio. The highway will be excluded because we've got to wait until that's finished in 2022. I guess the motion is that we'd resolution authorizing funding the property insurance appraisal services. Can I get a motion to do that? Motion by Supervisor Mosentein, seconded by Supervisor Skinner. Is there any further discussion? Supervisor Taxton.
If this hasn't been done in 15 years, can't we wait until the highway building's done and do everything at one time in another year?
Yes, that is a possibility, although I think you have the chance here of being underinsured, and I hate to wait a year and have something bad happen, We'll know, it'll be easy to kind of get an appraisal of the highway and just add it in there. I think this is a process like I said, 2 committees already voted to do it. I personally feel we should go ahead with it now and not take that chance. But yes, you could do it, you said. Any further questions or comments? If not, all those, we'll do a roll call vote. The resolution of authorizing funding for property insurance appraisal service. Yeah.
Stacy Wenzel,
Yes.
Dana Heller,
Yes.
Bob Anderson is absent. Dan Buchanan,
Yes.
Bob Horstman is absent. Bill Everett,
Yes.
Bert Skinner,
Yes.
Dale Heineke,
Yes.
Bob Rogers,
Yes.
Oscar Schob,
Yes.
Don Banks,
Yes.
Terry Lee,
Yes.
Carol Bartlett. Yes. Pam Paul.
Yes.
Bill Stradle.
Me? Yes.
Gary Taxdell.
Yes.
Jim Gores.
Yes.
Gary Nelson.
Yes.
Roberta Mosentein. Yes. Pete Olson.
Yep.
Steve Johnson.
Yes.
Carol Moen.
Yes.
Eric Kanye.
Yes.
Uyoki.
Yes.
Russ Rinzig.
Yes.
Todd Gerlin.
Yes.
Jerry McRoberts.
Yes.
Mark Thompson.
Yes.
Glenn Hansen.
Yes.
So 27 present, yes, and 2 absent.
That passes. Item number 11, discuss county board attendance and remote in-person changes to the rules and procedures. As Jeff has pointed out in here, we currently, our rules and procedures do not allow remote meetings. But because of COVID, we made an exception. I think maybe next month we ought to undo that exception and say everybody has to be in attendance at the meetings, to get it back to our rules and procedures. The question then becomes, do we want to change our rules and procedures probably next April to allow remote attendance at meetings, zoning board and committees. Jeff handed out a survey for the people online, Oscar and Bun and Eric. You have the ability, you should print out that survey that Jeff sent you, fill it out and get it to Jeff as soon as you can. So you guys three have the ability to do that?
Yep.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is, this is an advisory survey. It's not, we're gonna take all 29 of them, here's, compile them, that's the law. It's not, but it's you know, you got the supervisor saying it, it's gonna be a factor, but obviously it's gonna be an important factor. What I'd like to do is at the next meeting then, after this is compiled, we'll sit down and actually, somebody will have to make a motion as to, well, Jeff will tell us what the compilation is, but we'll have a discussion, and then a motion will have to be made that, hey, everything can be remote all the time. We want attendance, that you only have remote so many times in the committee, so many times in the board. We need to sit down and think about what you want after the discussion. Keep in mind that times are changing, and I'm not trying to sway you, but we are spending money here in the auditorium to allow all this remote stuff. But I do recognize the importance of being in person. I wouldn't feel comfortable running this meeting remotely. So, having said that, that really, unless somebody's got something really important to say, I think we should just wait until these are compiled, have a discussion next month. Anybody got a problem with that?
I don't know how important it is, but that was one of the reasons why we're spending money to remodel this, was so people could stay home and attend the meetings. So if that's, other than that, it was just a YouTube channel, so we still go through with spending all the money on the remodeling.
Well, we've already voted that, we did, so hopefully we do, so. Any other comments? If not, we'll take that up next month. Jim?
The remote thing there, I guess I'm kind of, in a way, I'm okay with it because there's some of the people that go south for the winter, but at the same time, I think that if there's any way that you can be here, you should be. I think that's you're elected to this position, and that's what you're supposed to. That's what you're by the people that you represent. And I think that you should be here personally to represent.
All right, anything else?
Louis, one other comment. We're remodeling the room to make it better for the people that are present as well as the people that might be remote. It isn't just to accommodate remote.
Right. Okay, no other comments? We'll bring this up next week. It'll be on suggestions for future agenda items in June. Jeff, you're up.
Jody, you want to do the financials? I'll turn the lights on.
Okay. We're going to take a look at first quarter financials. Okay, so comparing 20 to 21, we're going to be looking at each category by function. And that is set by, the functions are set by state statutes. So we're looking for revenues. We have an increase from 2020 of about $606,000. Taxes and transfer fees are up by about $135,000, and that's basically increase in tax levy and sales tax. Sales tax is just off to a great start again this year. We're at the first 4 months, we're like over 100,000 more than we were at last year, same time. So doing real well with that. Intergovernmental revenues, this is a lot of money from the state. Also indirect costs are up of different funds paying back the general fund, food pantry revenues, some sheriff's grants, and then some DHHS state funding, which is just kind of a timing thing. It's not new funding, it's just just timing from first quarter to second quarter. License and permits is up by about $23,525. That's basically in the land services department. Zoning permits are up as they also have a new phosphorus variance project, so there's some new fees that accompany that. Fines, forfeitures, and penalties, we're seeing a decrease of about $17,000. That's in the circuit court fees, so the fees that are collected out of the clerk of courts, and also some tax intercept is down. Public charges for services is up about $51,000. That is all at waste energy plant. So there's an increase in tipping fees, but also their steam revenue and the electrical sales is also up. Intergovernmental charges for services is up by about $64,000, and that's in the highway area of just their different rentals for the equipment that's used. Miscellaneous revenues, that's up about $99,000, and that's actually pertaining to the self-funded health insurance. It's a timing of transfers from the departments to the funds. So it's, not any new money, it's just, that's more or less a timing issue. And then just seeing a slight decrease in other financing sources of about $712, and that's just regarding the community development block grants and those loan repayments. So that is where we're sitting with regard to revenues.
Jody, what's a tax intercept?
Tax intercept, that would be for fines. We can put a tax intercept if people are overdue on their fines. And so we don't always get a lot, but there's always some money that comes trickling in every year. So it's definitely a revenue stream that's used. The Sheriff's Department has some tax intercept. Health and Human Services has tax intercept, and then as is the Clerk of Court's office.
Thank you.
And child support, yep, that's true too. Yep. So no, that's used quite a bit in all of those general fund departments. And then also there's a change in accounting for the self-funded health insurance. So last year in 2020, the first few months, we didn't really have a lot of claims because a lot of the claims that were being charged were actually being charged to WPS before we started the self-funded health insurance. So now this year, any claims that are coming in from the end of the year, we're paying those. And so it's basically the change in the accounting going from WPS being our insurance to now being self-funded. Public safety, that's the Sheriff's Department. We're seeing a decrease of about $57,500 from 2020. And that's basically a reduction in jail costs. Staffing costs were down, their overtime is down, maintenance agreements, food and supplies are all down for this year. Public Works, that's the Highway Department, and then that's also recycling. And so part of that is setting up those manned sites. There's extra expense with that. And then also the COLAs for the highway staff, and then some project timing in there too. Health and Human Services expenses are up about $133,000. That's basically COLAs, and then just kind of some miscellaneous, a little bit in purchase services, things like that. Culture, Recreation, and Education is seeing a decrease of about $118,000. That is partially the library appropriations for 2021 are actually less than they were in 2020. And then also just the timing of snow and ATV grant expenses. We didn't spend as much first quarter this year than we had last year. Conservation and Development, a decrease of about $116,000. That's in the Waste Energy Fund. So the turbine out there that was refinanced that was back in 2010, that was fully depreciated in 2020. So we're seeing a lot less depreciation on the books now than we did last year at the same time. Capital outlay, we have an increase of about $223,000. That's just those highway facility costs for the engineering and the design. Debt service, so here we are. So that's actually up about almost 1.9 million, and that's the timing of our debt payments. So before those Justice Center payments, some interest was due like June 1st, but then The principal payments were due in November, as was the second interest payment. And in 2020, we actually refinanced that with US Bank. And so the payment of that now is March 1st. And then also the waste to energy upgrades, that second payment to the state trust fund loan, which was about $445,000, that was actually due on March 15th. So we had that same cash, but it was just going out the door a lot sooner in the year than in the prior year. So that's why that looks so different. But putting everything together, this looks a lot different too, because we're actually seeing, so our total revenues are about 8.3 million. Total expenditures are about 17.6 million. So we're seeing a deficit of about 9.3. And this is where I normally tell you, this is where the fund balance, it's so important we have fund balance, because it's the fund balance that's actually paying for this in this first quarter when we have our revenues that are delayed. And so usually this number right here is about $1 million, $1.5 million that we have left over. And so you can see that this year it's showing that we have about $298. And no, we are not broke. The one thing with this, the way that the philosophy is for these quarterly financials is, in the event that any fund would have a deficit, the general fund it's the general fund's responsibility to make it whole. So with this, we don't take into account all of the fund balances that are in some of these other funds, like Health and Human Services. They have that $750,000. We have that tucked away. And so the other thing is so we do have, all of those fund balances, but then also this time of year, we have a fund, and we call it Fund 813, but that's where all the tax money goes. So after all of the settlements in February, we hold the money that comes in, and that's where all the tax money comes. And then that's where we pay out to the schools or to the municipalities and things. In May of each year, we take that cash and pay the levy for each of the funds. We do those transfers always in May. And so we have the money for the debt that's tucked away in Fund 813. So that it's reflecting that we only have $298, but in reality, that fund is sitting in 813, and that transfer will be made in May, as it normally is, and make these other funds whole. Is there any questions? It's just all numbers. So otherwise, no. I mean, we are sitting good. So
Thank you, Jody.
you bet.
Item 12B on your agenda, I did respond to Mr. Goodrich. He was very happy with the response of both of his public comment. He thanked me profusely. We had a good talk, and he was happy with what I gave him. Included with your packet is the impact of tourism across the state of Wisconsin. I'm not going to talk about this, but you can see how huge effect tourism has and where it doesn't. And you can see that counties like Bayfield County didn't suffer quite as bad because people moved to their cabins. You look at Bayfield, St. Croix, and Polk, they weren't quite so bad. But if you're in Brown County or out of Gamey, you can sure see that those people that play with shoulder pads on and a G on their helmet makes a big difference in how much sales tax you collect. So a little time on that. Tourism is a big industry. Milwaukee's down 30%. Resolutions for the Wisconsin Counties Association Annual Conference, they're due June 28th. The only one that I know of would be our elimination of the Badger Care Cliff, which was passed tonight, which, as Louis said, Wisconsin Counties Association does support that, as well as Representative Armstrong in Economic Development. On our accrued vacation and sick leave, you approved through Pelion Group, through Precision Group out of Chippewa Falls. We changed that just a little bit so that it matches our handbook, because our handbook says that after you've been here 5 years if you're management confidential, or 7 years if you're in rank and file, you get, obviously, you get 100% of your accrued vacation, but you get 50% of your accrued sick leave. So under this, the employee who leaves in good standing would be able either to put that accrued vacation and sick leave in either a health retirement account or into a 401A retirement account, thereby avoiding Social Security tax. So there's no change other than we dropped it from a retirement age trip lever to if you leave in good standing after 5 or 7 years. It's just another mechanism to put more money in the employee's pocket if they leave here in good standing. And so Charlotte brought that up and said it'd be a good thing. We ran it past Bruce Nelson, who was here, and he said, yep, that's a good way to do it. On the CDBG COVID-19 grant that was written for by EDC Director Dave Armstrong, this county board thought we would get $425,000, then it went to $450,000. We actually got $525,000. That's good news, but it's even better good news that we don't have any local match on these dollars. So it looks like what Salvation Army wants to do out there will be a really great thing and get that up and running. And it's in process. As far as I know, all the grant agreements have been signed, and Salvation Army will be proceeding with purchasing that property and then getting it rehabbed, I believe, yet this year. We did have one reclassification for a registered dietitian in Health and Human Services who actually took on more duties as directed by the state of Wisconsin for WIC, and that's part of our overall pay plan. The meeting with the municipalities, we're gonna pump the brakes on that, Bert, and other ones, because we're hitting a moving target. Every day that the information changes. So Kyle and Mark O'Connell, they know about it. We'll pull this off if we can. I'll do my best. But I think right now it's just best to wait and see where all this comes out. And besides that, the municipalities, other than counties, you get yours to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. It's going to go flow to them first, then it comes to the local municipalities. And then 12Y we've already talked about. I have the appointments for Solid Waste and Commission on Aging. I've talked to these people in person, or Jen Jaco has, and they're willing to serve, and I'd like them to be reappointed.
We get a motion to approve the appointments that are listed there, 11A or 13A and 13B. Motion by Supervisor Gerlin, second by Supervisor Everett. Is there any other discussion? Not all those in favor of those appointments indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by same sign. Motion's carried. Claims, petitions, and correspondence. I don't have suggestions for future items.
Well, the survey, you got the survey. I'm gonna walk around when we're done and pick them up.
Okay. So, all right, and anything else? You all at one time. And